Hello everyone and welcome to VTuber Night Live. We're here with the lovely font of Fauna. How are you doing, Fauna?
I'm well, and you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. How would you introduce yourself? What kind of VTuber are you?
I am a Christian Canadian druid VTuber.
Wow, very diverse. How long have you been VTubing?
I've been VTubing for a little over a year now. So I started in April 2022.
Oh, wow. So it's been over a year. How has it been?
It's been a fun journey. I've learned a lot. I think when most people start VTubing, they just assume that they get their avatar and they just play games or do whatever kind of content they want. But there's a lot of really neat kind of idiosyncrasies to VTubing that's kind of different than just streaming with a camera.
There's so much that goes into it that a lot of people don't know. So what inspired you to start VTubing?
That's a good question. I think I really liked the idea of being able to stream with an avatar because it let me feel less shy, I think, in the beginning. And also just kind of let me make content that is kind of different than what I'd been kind of watching. I had a lot of friends who streamed with just like live cams, and, you know, it was really interesting, and they like to play a variety of games, but I just kind of felt like everything was just kind of the same at the end of the day. And I was like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't want to make this kind of content if I'm going to make it. I want to make something that really sticks out and kind of differentiates me from the kind of like, I don't know, stereotypical streamer. So that's when I started looking into VTubers more. And I know lots of people say that the industry is getting oversaturated, but I think because of the ability to change your avatar and kind of make your persona whatever you want, there's really, I don't think that it will get oversaturated because people can, like, there's basically no ends to the imagination. Whatever you can think of, you can basically try and illustrate and animate.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I hear people say that sometimes. Like, I think some people struggle with whatever their goals are as a VTuber, and so they're like, oh, there's so many people, it's hard to compete. But I actually think there's a lot of space. It's just that people come into it and they're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be. These are the games I'm supposed to play. This is what my model's supposed to look like. And they confine themselves to that, and that makes it feel like they have less options than they really have.
I agree. I think people get really stuck in the, oh, I can either be say so or unsay so, or I have to be a cat girl or like whatever. And I think that that really limits what you're able to make if you see, you know, if you just need to broaden your view. There's so many cool things that people can do with VTubing, whether it's live 2D or 3D.
Yeah, and you mentioned before that you like to do things differently. I'm wondering, what makes you so different from other VTubers?
There are other streamers who do something similar than I do, but I approach a lot of my streams from a more spiritual perspective. I am a person of the faith, and I like to incorporate that into my streams. I do something on Sundays called Sabbath Sunday, where I do introductions to the Christian faith. It's for everybody to come and learn, regardless of if you are a person of the faith or not. And yeah, I just don't think that you necessarily see that in the VTuber community as much because, you know, it just kind of seems weird that you'd try and mix anime with religion.
Which is really sad because so much of anime actually has spiritual elements to it.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like art and spirituality are so interconnected. It's a shame to keep them separate.
And when I think of how I would approach like ministry to kids really like cartoons. And, you know, I know calling anime a cartoon can be, you know, sinful to some communities. But at the end of the day, I think if you had a kid and you sat them down and you said, hey, do you want to learn about the Bible from this person here? Or do you want to learn about the Bible from this animated short? I think nine out of 10 times the kids will say, I want to watch the cartoon. I want to watch the short. I want to watch the animation. So it's just kind of nice. It broadens people's perspectives and, you know, lets them see that, you know, faith isn't just something that is, you know, delivered in person, but it can be delivered on the internet or through media or, I don't know, just something that's different than the kind of stereotypical brick and mortar ministry.
You know, what that reminds me of is in Japan, for college classes, for example, they actually animate their lessons sometimes with an anime girl. because they know
Yeah.
it's so much more entertaining to have like this animated character learning with you as opposed to it being like, all right, I'm sitting here passively taking in information. So it's really cool to see that element of let's make education entertaining in VTubing.
I super agree. And for me, it's like when I'm watching content now, I really just like to watch VTubers because I'm not just watching the gameplay, I'm also watching the model. I'm watching the model's expressions. I'm seeing the different animations. I'm seeing the physics. And it's like you can just sit in front of a camera and play, and you can be animated and scream and do whatever. But I think when it comes from, an animated avatar, there's just so much more personality, in my opinion. When you get, for example, a live 2D model or a 3D model, how to actually animate your face to look interesting, because it's also easy to just look plain.
Yeah, for sure. And toggles help, but face tracking is kind of like an art form. Like you have
Yes,
to go
it
into
sure is.
VTube. Yeah, like you have to go into VTube Studio and play with the settings, but it's also very much how do you
Mhm.
act behind the camera, because that really makes it come alive.
No, exactly. And I remember watching Shy Lily, who is a more prominent VTuber, and how she trained herself for months to be able to get the right facial expressions that she wanted, so that when she was playing a game that, she could give the correct, like, I'm surprised face, or when she was, wanting to look interested, she was really good at raising her eyebrows, but also like making sure to keep her like eyes still big and inquisitive. And it's so interesting to see kind of the real kind of nitty-gritty of like, how do I make my model do everything that I know that it can do? And a lot of it comes down to the rigging on both ends for 3D and live 2D. And even there's aspects for PNG tubing too. If you have multiple different expressions for your PNG tuber, I think that also is an art.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned Shy Lily. That was actually my first VTuber, and I learned so much from her, including the acting. I was like, really? You have to like exaggerate your expressions to get this to work? Wow.
Well, it's almost like you have to. It's acting, and like
Yeah.
in its kind of most basic form, it is a form of acting. Because if you didn't have a camera, you would still have to make those facial expressions to appear surprised. The first videos that I saw was a clip of her on YouTube being like, yeah, I don't just like sit here and press a button and my model makes faces. Like sometimes my face will hurt because I've like smiled so much, or I've been trying to like stay surprised, or I'm trying to like, emphasize like my movements a lot and really show off the physics. So it's just, it's interesting. I've learned a lot from her, not just to be like a better entertainer, but to take advantage of, the resources that I have and the resources that I've invested in.
Was there a VTuber that really inspired you? Like, do you have a VTuber Oshi?
There's a lot of VTubers that I really love and appreciate. I don't think that there was one VTuber that really got me into VTubing. If I had to pick an Oshi now, I really love Tofi Music. She is she's a music composer, but she works a lot with corporate VTubers. She's done music for Ninja Sanji. She did Bao soundtrack. She just redid Vienna's alert sounds and soundtrack. So I really, really love her content. Her music is beautiful. Her streams are really fun and cozy. In terms of like actively viewing, I don't really watch many big VTubers because I really like interacting with the streamer. So I feel like sometimes it's not that I'm not getting the attention that I want from bigger streamers, but I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to watch this bigger streamer for the entertainment aspect for it, not for like the interactability of it. So that's where like Tofi comes in, because she is a smaller streamer in the sense of like, oh, hey, like her numbers aren't in the hundreds. It's really nice to, say something or comment on something that she's asking chat. And, like, it's like, oh, okay, cool. She's interacting more. So it's just a different experience between, my, if I had to pick like my small streamer Oshi versus my like corpo Oshi. I really like Petragurin though. If I had to pick like a corpo Oshi, I really, really like her. She's adorable. Her singing is beautiful. I think she's really witty. And I really just love her design. Her design is adorable.
And I think that's totally valid too, because I've had people in my chat say, I could watch the bigger VTubers, but I don't feel this personal connection because it's like 1,000 comments per second. Like, how is anyone going to be able to really interact with anyone? And if you pay attention to the chat too, a lot of people aren't talking to the streamer themselves. They're like talking to each other about something related to what's happening. So it's like the big streamer becomes like this planet that everyone is orbiting around, as opposed to it being like we're all a community, if that makes sense.
No, exactly. It's just two different experiences, and I prefer the kind of smaller end. But when I'm looking for something funny or something, more kind of maybe scripted or planned out, that's when I really like to watch Petra.
So, Fauna, I'm going to give you the floor for a moment to talk about something that you may want to talk about. Is there anything that comes to mind?
I think the question that I get asked the most when, I have viewers approach me is like, oh, how do I even start VTubing? Because it's really easy for you to watch the shorts of people saying, hey, do you want to be a VTuber? Here's like 3 easy ways to do it. But there's a lot more to it than just what is shown in these shorts. And I don't think it's discussed enough. I've had several people that I've discussed with, because I do live 2D rigging. And so I have experience with, working with the art. But I've had people get scammed a lot where they'll commission an artist on Twitter, or they'll find a Fiverr artist and they'll say, oh, well, I have this art, but like my rigger won't rig it. Why? And I'll take a look and I'll say, oh, well, it's because it's not explained like what all of the criterion that you need in order to VTube, PNG tubing, live 2D VTubing, and 3D VTubing all have different criteria and requirements in order for you to get started. But none of that I feel like is explained in detail. So that's why there's so many people that are like, oh, I want to do it, but I have no idea how.
I've seen posts on Twitter about this where people are like, I want to get started, but I have no idea what to do. And it feels like there is no central hub of information or anything. It's very much he said, she said, or someone makes a promise of something. And then you find out, oh, actually, this is a scammer account. And, now the person's off Twitter all of a sudden and you can't get your money back. It really sucks. How do you think we could resolve that? Do you think that it's more of a, maybe bigger creators and the community in general should be sharing information more often? Like, how do we solve that?
I feel like at the core of it, the VTubing community is really good about not gatekeeping how to VTube, but there's no central consensus on like what your step should be, because there's so many ways to approach it. Reddit has been a really good source. Reddit has a lot of guides on how to get started depending on what avenue you want to go through. But I honestly, like, if you're a viewer and you have an Oshi and, your Oshi is open to you asking questions in Discord or asking questions on Twitter, like getting down to the root of somebody who kind of has their resources together, I think is the best way, instead of just trying to, dive in blind and really figure it out. Because like I've been burned for, whether it's art or rigging or whatever, because I had no idea. I was just excited and eager and, was very trusting. But yeah, I'm always open. I've had people who say, Fauna, like, how do I get started? Like, what should I do? And I always suggest and say, stream first with with nothing. Like, stream with no cam, just stream with a mic and your game, and see if you even like streaming in the first place. Because that's a huge first step. My second step would be like invest in a PNG, because PNGs are often more affordable and more accessible for people to be like get into. Also, VTube Mini is free. I highly recommend that if you do the PNG route, that you support the creators of VTube Mini, because they do set it for free, but they would like to have some kind of compensation. So whatever you can afford, whether it's $5, $10, $15, it's great software. You will use it forever and ever and ever, because say one day your camera isn't tracking for 3D or your camera isn't tracking for live 2D. You can always default back to having your PNG because it's only mic reactive. So that would be like my very first step. See if you like streaming. Then move over to a PNG. And if you're super passionate about VTubing, once you have your PNG, then you can move on to getting an animated live 2D model. You can maybe move over and do a make your own Vroid model. There's Vroid models that you can commission. The big, massive blendered 3D models are incredibly beautiful, but definitely more of a crowd-funded project to work on. If I had to, if I was to encourage anybody to start VTubing, just stream even 3 times. Stream 3 times with no camera, play a game, see how you interact with the viewers that come and watch you. And if you're like, oh my gosh, I love this, then work on creating your persona or your OC and just get the picture of it down. Figure out what your design is, and then ask an artist to make it with a mouth closed and a mouth open. Throw it into VTube Mini, and then see how you go from there.
I agree. I've seen so many people over the past year spend a bunch of money on a beautiful model and
Hmm.
assets, and a lot of them aren't even streaming anymore. I feel so bad for people who are just like, oh,
Hmm.
I'll definitely enjoy this. This looks fun. Playing games, talking to chat. Oh, how hard can it be? And then they start and they realize, oh, actually, this isn't for me. It's a lot more tough than I thought. You do have to worry about like judgments of people on the internet. Not everyone on Twitter is nice. There's a lot of difficulties that people don't see. They just see how glamorous it is and they're like, "Oh, I could do that."
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I'm not a big streamer. I'm a pretty small streamer in the grand
Hmm.
scheme of things. And like, I've just learned to ignore Twitter because it's way easier to just go on Twitter and complain and whine and go witch hunt people than
Yep.
actually do anything productive, which sounds very negative, and I hate to frame it like that. But that's kind of at the end of the day when I'm looking at my community on Twitter. I'm very blessed to have them because they're very supportive and loving and they like to share my content, and I'm really, really fortunate for that. But there's always the like, the fear in behind where it's like, uh-oh, if I say something, whether it's on stream or on Twitter, like I already know that if somebody disagrees and it catches enough like flame, like there will be a huge, massive forest fire to put out. And then
Yeah.
it's like it's like, yeah, that pressure is really scary, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, it's also just a bunch of people who just like to like to feel angry and feel outraged too. So you kind of have to look at it from both perspectives.
Yeah, exactly. You got every kind of person on Twitter. There's a lot of wonderful
Mhm.
people. Most of my community came from Twitter over to Twitch, and then like
Mhm.
Twitch helped, but it really started with Twitter. There's a lot of good people
Yep.
here. But you get all sides of humanity on social media. So you have to be prepared for all sides, good and bad.
Mhm.
And if you can practice detachment before getting into VTubing, I really recommend it because there are some
Mhm.
people who get attached to, you know, any criticism they get and they suffer for it. I think it's important to keep in mind what you do have, the love you do have, and not to like magnify the little bit of negativity you will get from time to time.
Because you're never going to please everyone. At the end of the day, like I have people who come into my stream. I'm very much of the sense of like, hey, I'm going to talk about God occasionally on stream. I'm not here to indoctrinate you. I'm here to share, my faith because I'm passionate about it.
Hmm.
And if people are interested and want to pursue further, that's something that I'm super willing to help with and help guide through. But I'll even still have people come in just to be hateful for no reason. And I think that
Yeah.
would happen whether I'm a VTuber or not. But you
Hmm.
just kind of have to say, okay, like this person is looking for attention, whether it's positive or negative. Is this gonna have a huge impact on my community? Probably not. Was it inspired by me? Probably not at the end of the day. Lots of people just love to browse tags on Twitch and just be toxic for no reason other than they're bored.
When people are looking to start something, they will find a reason. Even if you don't give them
Yep.
one, they will invent one. So have
Hmm.
have confidence in yourself, have faith in yourself, and you always have your friends to reach out to. Not everything has to be a public tweet. Sometimes it has to go there, but I feel like 90% of the time it doesn't have to.
Literally 90% of the time. I have a dump server for that, like on Discord. If I'm like, hey, I'm really frustrated about something, but I know if I voice it on Twitter, it's going to either be inflammatory or just not productive, then I'll just write it in my dump server just so I can get it off my chest so that it's written down somewhere. And then it's like, okay, cool. I've typed it out. My feelings
Hmm.
are there. I voiced it to the nether, and then I can just move on.
That's a very healthy coping mechanism, actually.
Mhm.
Wow, that's really smart. Huh. It's like a personal vent channel.
Yeah, basically. Like I have a dump channel where I do all my like I have like all my VTubing stuff. So I have my little like garbage corner of like, hey, I'm feeling like this way, or this happened on stream today and I'm really frustrated that it happened, or oh, my camera clonked out today and I had to go back to use like my PNG, but VitoTube wouldn't load, or like whatever kind of feelings I have. If I'm like, hey, these aren't productive for anyone,
Hmm.
including myself, I'll just blah, 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 type them out. And then it's like, okay, cool. It's out. It's not in my body anymore. It's in the internet, in my little dump server. And then I can just move on and say, okay, what can I do differently next time? Or how can I, engage with my community better next time? Or I don't know, just approach an issue different next time. I have like a 3-strike rule. If somebody's going to come in and be inflammatory or just be toxic, it's like, oh, hey, this is you're breaking part of my TOS on stream, just letting you
Mhm.
know. You have 2 more chances. And then if they're not going to do it, I'm usually pretty lenient and understanding that, if people come in, I've had people come in before and say, hey, I don't know if I feel safe in your stream. Is it like an affirming stream? Like, are you LGBTQ plus affirming? Like, am I
Ah,
welcomed here?
yeah.
And it's like, of course you are. Like, everybody's welcome here. I'm not here to, put judgment on who you are. You're a beautifully crafted human being. And I just want to be able to come here to interact with you, provide you some entertainment for the day. And if you ever have questions about faith and stuff, that's what I'm here for. But I'm not
Mhm.
here to just make you believe in my faith, because I know just how diverse people's experiences are. But I want to be a positive light for my faith, so that when people come and say, hey, I met this Christian, her name is Fauna. She likes to talk about, the gospel on the internet. And it's really just nice to hear her say that, I'm welcome even if I don't know anything, or even if my opinions differ from hers. I love to agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, as long as you respect my faith, I'm going to respect yours.
So there's a question coming to my mind, and I'm still wording it out. Are you willing to share like the story of like what your faith means to you? Because I know some people sometimes have a moment in their
Mhm.
life where maybe they weren't faithful, but then something happened and they were like, oh shit, a spiritual epiphany. And I'm wondering if
Yeah.
something like that happened to you or if it was like
Mhm.
something gradual. Everyone has their spiritual story.
Yeah. So within the Christian community, that's called your testimony. And a
Ah.
testimony is basically how you came to know Jesus in your life and
Hmm.
what made you drawn in so that you would accept him as your savior, is kind of like the gist of what your testimony is. Looking at it in retrospect, as an adult looking back, God had always interceded in my life in a lot of ways. I grew up in a broken family and had a really kind of rough start to my life. I had parents
Mm.
who worked long hours, so I was a very parentified kid growing up. And I think that God had placed specific people in my life to take care of me and to teach me how to be independent when I needed to be. And then as I came into my late teenhood, and just living in a really unstable and kind of chaotic environment, I really was just aiming to be exactly what my family wanted me to be, not what I wanted to be. I had no kind of
Yeah.
sense of self-identity. I was more of like oh, this is what my family expects me to be. So that's what I'm going to do. And I want to make them proud and I will make them proud. But at the end of the day, I kept failing and I would make mistakes. And I was doing I was going to school for things that I didn't want to study. And I just had no
Mm.
motivation. And I just felt like, what is the point in me trying to please everybody when I can't do it? I'm just a failure. And so a lot of this really kind of accumulated when my husband, he was my best friend at the time, we had a big fight and he ghosted me for 4 months. And I was really lonesome and I just couldn't figure out why he would do that. But it turns out that he ended up going to Bible college and just needed some time to just reflect and understand what was going on in his life and how, he was to fit in the world, because we were both just very much like, where do I fit? What do I do? I was so focused on trying to be, the perfectionist daughter of, I was going to go to like school to be a teacher or go to like into medical school and stuff like that. Like, it was just really one of those things where I was just trying to get good grades and do exactly what my parents wanted. And so he contacted me at Christmas time and we reconnected. And, we discussed like why we had our huge fight and how, we hurt each other that way, like hurt our little feelings. And so, yeah, then we chatted when he went back to Bible college. And I just
Mhm.
saw this transformation from this kind of like mopey, very like, unconfident kid, and he was growing up to be this like very like self-assured and super proud of his faith. And I was like, wow, like that's really neat. Like, maybe I should start looking into this, because I feel like, whether it was the school or whether it was his relationship with his faith, I'm like, wow, like that's really, really neat. And so, yeah, he started to teach me and I started to look into it. And we slowly went from just being friends to dating. And yeah, finally one night I had had a big fight with my parents and I was failing my courses in university. And I was just like, hey, like there's no point. Like the only person that, I really love and I feel loved by is, my boyfriend at the time. And so I was like, God, if you're real, you're going to take my anxiety away. You're going to take my depression away. And tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel fine. And obviously that sounds, outrageous. that sounds so silly to just yell into like space, like, hey, I'm not going to feel like, anxious anymore with someone who has, general anxiety as,
Mhm.
a diagnosed disorder. But yeah, the next day I woke up and I was like, why don't I feel that buzz in my chest anymore? Like, why do I feel like I can think clearly? And I kind of passed it off as being like emotionally drained from the night before. But then the next day passed and I still didn't feel that humming buzz in my chest and in my brain. Like I was like, this is like so weird. And I was like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, like God, God came into my life today. So that was kind of the pivotal moment of me, coming to know Christ. And then I really started diving into, looking into the Bible and like what it means to be a Christian and, what it means to set myself apart from people who live, kind of like in the Christian world, we call it a secular lifestyle. Secular just means living your life without God. So
Hmm.
a secular lifestyle versus a Christian lifestyle. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I feel like this is a God who has actively been in my life for a really long time, but I had just never had the experience to see because I never had that upbringing. I grew up faithless.
Yeah.
Later on in life, my family became Darwinists. And
Interesting.
so, yeah, it's interesting. It's another lifestyle and another outlook on life that I don't necessarily agree with now, but I respect people who, have embraced this approach. But yeah, like that was really my pivotal moment. And I just want other people to be able to feel the same way that I do if they feel as lost. Because for me, living in a world where like things are dictated by whether it's, specifically evolution or it's specifically like survival of the fittest, that was the aspect of Darwinism that my parents really held on to was the strong thrive, the weak die kind of thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, that doesn't make any sense because if the strong live and the weak die, like that's not how society works. That's not
Hmm.
how, this central basis of morality of, we need to love one another and, be good to your neighbor. And like it seems so counterintuitive to me. So I'd always kind of felt this like, oh, hey, I don't agree with everything that my parents do. And obviously not everybody can. But I'm like, no, I now understand why that I'm fundamentally different that way.
Yeah, wow. I didn't know about your upbringing and it sounds so much
Mhm.
like my own. So hearing that, I'm just like, wow, you've come very far. And I
Thank
want to
you.
say that although I don't know you well, I'm still really proud of you because I know what it's like to be parentified at a young age and to not have
Hmm.
like anyone to keep you safe, and it feels like you're kind of fighting to keep yourself alive and trying to find a reason to keep going, and I'm just glad you're still here and doing what you're doing.
I'm proud of you too. I think honestly, just being able to share those lived experiences with people who, have the same experiences in common is just really nice to be like, hey, we both made it out the other side. We've
Yeah.
approached it from different perspectives, but at the same time, we've still overcome, great trials and tribulation at the end of the day. And I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Oh man. And that reminds me so much of why I started VTubing. In the beginning, I was in a really bad place health-wise, like bedridden, couldn't do anything, couldn't go outside and socialize, and VTubing was my thing that kept me going. And I would not be who I am right now if not for my fans and my friends that I've met through VTubing. And
Mhm.
it's just, oh, it's crazy. It's crazy how people and forces can come into your life and change
Mhm.
it in such a short period of time. And sometimes you don't fully notice in the moment just how much you've changed, but then you look back and you're like, whoa, I did that. That's crazy.
No, exactly, right? And like from my spiritual perspective, it's like I don't believe in coincidences because
Hmm.
for me, I feel like, God orchestrates all. And so it's like, you know what? Like, regardless of if you feel like God has orchestrated this or whether this was just coincidental in life, it's like, wow, like this experience, even that we're having right now, it's like, it's not a coincidence. I think we were supposed to come and talk together today and, share different aspects of ourselves and our passions. And yeah, I think that it's, going to put us into, I don't know, the direction that God wants us to go. And regardless of if you feel like God moves you in your own life or not, but yeah, I don't know. I can just see that there's forces in the world that like you can't just say that it's a coincidence. Like there's no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything has a premeditative plan. So I don't know. That's how I like to think about it anyway.
No, I agree. And in a similar light, I also don't believe in like regrets. Because I'm like, well,
Hmm.
everything happens for a reason. It was a lesson. It may have caused a lot of
Hmm.
suffering, but that doesn't mean it wasn't meaningful and that you didn't learn anything or that you didn't, get stronger from it. Although,
Hmm.
sometimes genuinely bad things happen to people like when they're young and not prepared to be
Hmm.
strong. But still, our experience can become wisdom. And then with that wisdom, we can help other people who maybe we find that
Hmm.
are going through the same things. And so I feel like everything does have a purpose. I agree with that.
Yeah, and the way that I like to look at it from my kind of ministry perspective is like I wouldn't be able to talk to people who had my shared experiences if I hadn't had them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a huge part of my ministry is I work with youth. And so it's like, yeah, I have a lot of youth who have parents who are divorced, which I also have parents that are divorced. And I have a lot of kids who are angry that their parents either just couldn't make the marriage work or, that ex-parent is awful for leaving or,
Yeah.
whatever extra, like, whatever circumstances have arisen. And it's like, I couldn't minister to you unless I had those experiences. So even though it was
Mm.
really unfortunate for child me, it's really important for adult me to be able to help other kids who are going through the same thing so they don't feel as alone or they feel like, nobody can understand them when no, I can understand you. And I know what you've gone through and I know the pain that you felt and you're supported here.
And that's really beautiful because, in a way, it's kind of like you have the opportunity to help the younger version of yourself heal by
Mhm.
helping these
Mhm.
children. It comes full circle.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. Wow. I'm
Thank
so
you.
inspired
I
right now.
try and like there's days where I get stuck in it though, where it's like, wow, like I look at my life and I've been diagnosed as a like late diagnosis as low spectrum needs autism and
Hmm.
ADHD. And it's like, wow, I wonder if my parents had taken an extra moment to really observe how I did things, if I would have either been diagnosed earlier or I'd been able to give different coping mechanisms. And I felt really bitter about that for a long time because I had nobody to see this. And I obviously couldn't see this within myself because I was a child. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, there's still days where I'm like, wow, I'm this way because, my parents did X, Y, or Z. And it's
Yeah.
like, I can choose to look at it that way and choose to, kind of self pity. But at the end of the day, I can mourn the loss. And mourning is a big process. Sometimes it takes, days, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months or years. But I like just coming back to it, it's like, okay, but my parents are also imperfect people too. Like I am just as imperfect as
Mm.
they are. They didn't know what they were doing and they may have unintentionally had done all of these things to me. So, it's trying to approach it from the perspective of grace of like, these people maybe their parents had also, failed them.
Yeah.
And, maybe their grandparents had been, failed as well. So I like to look at it as I am self reflective and I want to be the one to break the generational trauma and the generational hurt that has gone on so that going forward, I can take what I've learned and hopefully, help, the future generations learn. And I already know that I will hurt people because I'm imperfect. I'm going to say something or I'm going to, approach an issue or I'm going to make somebody feel excluded. But I just hope that people would have, the bravery to say, "Hey, Fauna, like you made me feel this way," and then I can be accountable for my actions and say, "Oh, I didn't mean to. Like, will you please forgive me?" Like, I think that that's really important because, forgiveness and feeling forgiven and giving that forgiveness is, it's a relationship thing, and I think that everybody should have the ability to voice, when they feel hurt.
Self-compassion for yourself and others is huge. I feel especially when you come from a background with trauma, when there's like ADHD, autism
Mhm.
involved too. Like I have depression, anxiety, CPTSD, and I think I have ADHD. And these are all things that were not diagnosed until I was an adult. And I've
Mhm.
had those moments too where I was like, I am so far behind someone my age because of such and such reasons. You can get stuck in that thought loop of just rehashing the negative stuff. And it keeps you stuck in the past. It keeps
Mhm.
you living there and doesn't let you move forward with your life. Having compassion for yourself, and especially, I want to say, people who struggle with disabilities, this need to compete and to be like everyone else. We do have limitations. We are human in our own ways. being able to accept ourselves and know that we are enough, even when the world kind of doesn't make us feel that way. So important, man. So important. And I wish that more people in the VTuber community knew that, because I see sentiments like that all the time. Has ADHD or autism helped or harmed your ability to be a VTuber? And do you think that there may be a stigma against that in the community sometimes?
It's been really interesting because I got diagnosed in February of this year. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really trying to be self-reflective and how, now knowing these, attributes for myself. I don't want to say that it's, an impairment or a disability because, they're part
Mm-hmm.
of who I am. And whether they make some things more difficult and whether they make some things easier is, always something to, consider.
Mm-hmm.
So like I am very intense. And I've always been intense. And so I don't know if that maybe comes from, my autistic side, but when I am very interested in something, I'm very hyper focused and I'm very like, this is what I want to do all the time and I'm going to do it until I burn out because
Mm-hmm.
I'm very
Mm-hmm.
bad at gauging my energy levels that way, where it's like, oh, if it's something I'm really passionate about, that's all I want to do. The ADHD part of it is like, oh, cool, I'm going to make TikTok shorts and I'm going to make these shorts and I'm going to make 30 of them all at once. But then I like won't touch them
Yes.
again for
Yes.
literally months because it's like, I'm not interested in it. And it's like, okay, what are the things that I am really interested in and that I want to cultivate and craft
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like make as my own? And so finding those things are hard when you're a content creator because you're also expected to do like the bare minimum of like, oh, okay, if you want to grow, you need to, stream on Twitch 3 to 4 times a week for a minimum like 3 hours. Or if you want to grow on YouTube, you need to make sure that you're putting out a short every day and then, making like, longer form YouTube content that's between 5 and 10 minutes. Like, there's a lot of different requirements for things. And it's like, oh, but sometimes I like don't want to do that because my focus is more on the game that I'm streaming or
Mm.
is like, oh no, but this week I just want to rig and I don't want to, necessarily have to do other things. So like the aspect of growing is something that I want to do, but I don't necessarily have the focus to like go about making sure I do every single step to ensure I'm growing because sometimes I'm like, no, I just want to rig my model this week. Or this week I want to learn how to video edit. Or this week I'm like, no, I don't want computer time this week. I just want to spend time with my husband and my dog outside because it's the summertime and I like to touch grass.
Me too. Me
So
too.
that's been it's hard, right? Because I have a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still, trying to, get outside and exercise and spend quality time with the people that are important to me. And it's like 24 hours is not enough time in the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I
Yeah.
don't know. But I feel like that's also given me some really, really cool and great things because, when I'm hyper focused on doing shorts for, 5 days straight and I make like 30 of them all at once, it's like, cool. I know that I can do it, but do I really like it? So it's like, oh, okay. I
Mm.
have to think about the things that I really do like. And at the end of the day, I like streaming. I love streaming. I love interacting with people. Am I good at video editing? No. But am I learning? I'm trying. Do I like TikTok content? No, not at all. I really don't like shorts content because I find it's just something that I'm just not interested in making. I'm just not very good at it. I'm not very good at scripted stuff. I'm very good at freeform. But yeah, I love project curation. So whether it's getting assets, helping other people get assets, whether it's like, organizing charity events, like those kind of project coordinations, I love because I get to do lots of different things kind of all at once. And then when a whole project, comes to a wrap and everything comes together, it's like, oh, look at the accumulation of all my hard work. And then you just kind of see everything play out. So I don't know. I feel like there's things that have been a hindrance, but also things that my ADHD and autism have made that only I can make because it's who I am.
Exactly. And, I also have the same mindset of I don't like calling things disabilities because it's really contextual. A lot of what we consider a learning disability is really just a learning disability because we have institutions that aren't designed to
Yeah.
teach in more than one way. So it's like, oh, well, if you're not cookie cutter, material, then sucks to be you, I guess. You're broken. We don't have to adjust anything. It's just on you. And I think that sometimes society just blames too much on individuals rather than being accommodating. So yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned like it actually helps you in some ways. Like that
Yeah.
passion, that drive is an asset when you're a content creator.
I don't know about the whole, like, I don't find it as much in the VTuber community, but like in the
Hmm.
corporate world itself, like I have had people say, oh, well, like she's really intense and she's really bossy. And it's like, okay, well, just because I'm a lady and I'm very type A and just very, organized and to the point,
Hmm.
like, doesn't mean that I'm bossy. It just means that like I understand what my position requires me to do. But I think yeah, I think that people who have high drive and high passion for things, I don't know, I think it kind of gets misconstrued as like the negative intensity and like, oh, you're bossy and oh, like you're, prioritizing like weird things. And it's like, no, you know what? I'm prioritizing what makes me happy.
Exactly. And I've had that same experience of the drive being misconstrued as something else. I've tried to explain it to people too. Like, I work as intensely as I do because it makes me happy. The results that come from it
Yeah.
are like pure coincidence of the fact that I'm just having so much fun. That's why I do it so often. And it
Hmm.
also like actually helps me regulate my depression and stuff when I make
Hmm.
stuff that makes me happy all the time. But I
Yeah.
don't think that that kind of drive is normal for people. So they see that and they're like, wow, like if that were me, that would take me several hours. Man, that person must be like a chronic workaholic and a number of
Yeah.
other things. And I'm just over here like, no, I'm just vibing. This is just like what I was made for. That's why it
Mhm.
looks so easy just because I'm passionate about it.
But yeah, it takes time to learn and it takes time to hone your craft and perfect things. And so when I look at something that I make and I'm like, oh well, like X creator makes it better, and it's like, well, how long has X creator been making things for,
Yes.
or does X creator have the resources to hire somebody to do that? And it's like, oh yeah, no, like I need to settle down. I always set my production bar very, very high, and I
Hmm.
have since the very beginning. It's like if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. And so I
Yes.
know lots of people are like, okay, Fauna, like, you're taking like stream element sponsorships for games that, people don't necessarily like. Or, I think that that's kind of the stereotypical, like, oh, that's a mobile game sponsorship. Like, this one's kind of lame, but it's like, but no, like I want to complete it and I want to do well because I know that this revenue that I make will be able to go into this project. And I know that this project will make me go from like, like middle tier to like upper middle tier. And this will go towards overlays and this will go towards like stream BGM or like whatever. And so I would rather work hard knowing that all of the resources that I'm working hard for go into something that I'm, passionate about and that I want to be exactly the way I want it to be.
I've seen tweets where small VTubers will say something like, I've been streaming for a whole year. This person debuted
Hmm.
yesterday. They have more followers than me. This sucks. This isn't fair. I've been working hard for so long. I should have more followers. And I'm over here thinking, but that's just what you see online. Like, what if they were a
Yep.
content creator for 5 or 10 years prior? What if they had a full time
Yep.
job and they saved up for 2 years to be able to do all that? You don't see that. And so people beat
Hmm.
themselves up. They think like maybe they're doing something wrong, or the VTuber fan base is like superficial and just cares about pretty models. But it's just sometimes someone's been working at it for so long, they
Hmm.
have an advantage. You can catch up. You just
Well, and
gotta
I
be
like to
patient.
exactly, and there's also an element of luck that I think that people don't like to, admit. But like, the algorithm is something that you can predict and something that you can try and ride, but there's
Mm-hmm.
also this element of luck. And I know that people don't like to be like, "Oh, well, yeah, like this person is lucky." And it's like, yeah, maybe they had one tweet that blew up. And, it was a lucky chance that, X creator saw it and retweeted it and they blew up that way. Okay, cool, great. But that shouldn't discourage you from continuing to try your best, because at the end of the day, and this is something that I learned from Rin Penrose. She's a VTuber from Idol. She's like, sometimes people will blow up, but they're not ready to blow up. And it's because they
Yes.
don't know, like they don't know how to work within that community, or they didn't have the opportunity to build up a solid, core foundation of a community. So they know so many people in their community now, but it's like, oh, okay, but I know like only know people at a surface level, and I don't necessarily have like a core group of, friends or creators or kind of inner community members that I really trust. And all these people really liked me for this one video. And so now do I just have to make this one style of video? Like it's sometimes it's hard. It's hard to be like, oh shoot, I'm blowing up. And but I need to like, do I continue writing what I do? Do I just do what I love? Like I think it's nice to grow slow so that you can really find your niche, really find what you like to do, and then do it well.
Yes, I wish people talked about this more often. I feel like we don't talk about the negative sides of success, I imagine,
Hmm.
because we just hope it's all good because it seems glamorous. But growing too fast and not being prepared for it has destroyed people. Like
Hmm.
literally, it's such a blessing to grow slowly because you have the opportunity to get used to the incremental shifts and you actually have
Hmm.
a strong connection with your audience. And I think that's so important, especially for VTubers, because if the connection with your audience isn't super deep, you can end up in some situations where maybe you're known for something you don't really want to do and you want to pivot, but you're like, man, if I pivot
Yep.
and I know that people aren't really here for me, they're here for some trend I did or a game or
Yep.
something. Now you're like, man, in order for me to be authentic to myself, I have to like bomb my analytics and lose a huge chunk of my community because
Hmm.
people weren't really here for me. I feel like it's so easy for me to say this as a big creator, but small creators, please, please be appreciative of where you are right now.
Yep.
Take advantage of it. There's nothing wrong with being small. It is a blessing in disguise. You have time to prepare for when you do blow
Hmm.
up, and that is a good thing.
And like it's cozy. Like enjoy the
Hmm.
coziness while you have it is the kind of, at
Yes.
least is what I would recommend, because one day would I love to have, like people in the hundreds watching me? It's like, yeah, but at the same time, like I'm gonna miss just talking to my chat a lot and just
Yeah.
having like the core, like like right now my CCV is 25. I love, having like my core like 25 people come to hang out, and I can ask
Mm-hmm.
them about the day and ask them about specific things that they've shared with me that I feel like would be lost if I had hundreds of people watching. And then it goes from that, like the different experience. It's going from like the kind of intimate, like, hey, I can talk to my, smaller VTuber and I can, show her game tricks and, she'll be more likely to see what I'm saying, to like, oh, okay, like now my VTuber Oshi is purely there for entertainment and not for the interaction part of it. So I really like where I am right now. Do I want to grow one day? Yeah, I think I would, but I'm still trying to find out what I want to do. And right now I'm just enjoying where I'm at.
By the way, you guys are invited to Fauna's very first subathon from September 16th to September 30th. She's going to have a lot of milestones, incentives, giveaways, and so much more, so you don't want to miss it. Well, thank you so much, Fauna, for the interview today. Where can people find you if they want to support you?
People can find me primarily on Twitch, twitch.tv/font_of_fauna. You can find me at Twitter, twitter.com/font_of_fauna, or you can find me on YouTube, which is at Fontoffawna. My YouTube is still very bare bones. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to make on YouTube. But yeah, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and I'll be sure to add all those links to the description, guys, so check her out, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye bye!